including a teacher or teachers that would be in a classroom. We know that classes are going to be set up, the desks are going to be set up in rows, right? They're going to be 6 feet apart. Everyone's going to be wearing a mask. You know, at least right now, the days of raising your hand and having a teacher come up to the student, right, and leaning down next to them to give help, you know, those days are over, at least for some time. The DOE told us, right, that we can have about 200 to 240 students, so about 40 to 50% of our students in the building at any one particular time. And we also know from the chancellor just from earlier this week that if there's 2 cases in the building, right, not just in our school, right, but there's 4 schools in our building, there's 2 cases, that the campus would shut down for at least 24 hours while there's an investigation to figure out whether, you know, it actually is COVID. And if so, there would then be some, you know, the schools would need to flip, you know, overnight to a remote learning schedule. So I guess the thing that we know based off of all of that is that in person, you know, is not the in person that we all know and love. And I can tell you, like, our staff, our teachers, me, like, we want we want to be in school with students. I was talking to a parent earlier this week who said that their child, you know, I asked, like, well, why do they want to come back? And they were like, I want to see my friends. I want to see my teachers. I want to go to the clubs. I want to do the after school activities. And I completely agree with that. I did not wake up when I was in high school for my math class, like, or my social studies class or my English class, right? Like, I got up because of the social interaction that I had. But that's just not I don't see a safe way of doing that, at least at the beginning of this school year. I can't see a scenario where inviting 240 people in on September 8th is a good idea. So our recommendation, this goes back to that survey, is to do remote if it's within your capacity. We are well aware that there are some families that will need to send their student to school, right? And we will be there, right? There will be a place for them in the school in order to sit and do work. However, like, I can't in good conscience say that I can guarantee the health and safety of everyone. I don't see that right now. So what that means is that for students that do come into the building, they won't be changing classrooms. They'll be assigned a room, likely with their advisory, right? And they'll get onto a laptop, right? And they will engage in the same remote work that students at home are doing, right? So, what that means is that a teacher will be teaching a live class, right? And there'll be some students that are at home, and there'll be some students that are at Maker engaging at the same time. We think that, again, is the best model for right now. If we have to flip to a fully remote scenario overnight, it's actually really easy from a school perspective, because teachers are only preparing for one class, right? And students, like, all students have the same schedule, right? Like, the schedule wouldn't change whether they're at home or whether they're at school. So these are the last couple of slides, and then we're gonna open it back up for some additional questions, and we're gonna see how many of those need to knows we got answered. So one of the things that we need for you to do is to, if you haven't taken a look at the survey, right, we need for you to do that, right? And so there are 2 options on that, right? One of them is to fill out the survey and say that you're going to opt in to have your child do 100% remote from home. Students will get their regular Maker schedule. Classes will include live instruction. And if you want to do that, you need to fill out the form that's going in the chat. It's gone in the chat a few times already. And that's due on Friday. If you want, right, for the student to do the in-person hybrid model with them coming to Maker, every other day essentially, you don't need to do anything, right? You don't have to fill out the survey. Again, this survey is really important, and we're not even sure when we're going to get the results of the survey. But like right now, I don't know if 5 people have chosen remote, or if 250 or 300 people, families have chosen remote, which makes it really hard to build, a schedule that works. Teachers want to know what they're teaching. They want to know what the periods of the day are. Students want to know what their classes are, and what they're, and when they're supposed to be meeting in those. So I'm going to open it up now. If you have questions that you want to put in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask, ask any question. For folks that are monitoring the chat, my staff, are there any questions that have come up repeatedly that you think I should start with?
Yes, Cheryl Ann, Jade and Jada had a question. Will UA Maker, will it be UA Maker only teachers teaching the students if we choose remote learning? And the answer is yes. And that was already answered. I'm sorry, folks.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the only question so far.
Okay.
I think you've already answered how are students going back to school.
Yeah, and again, I think I would just add on that, like, we're saying that the remote option, I think, is the safest right now. Again, my hope is that changes, right? Like, our goal, is to get everyone back into school when it's safe to do so. There are supposed to be 4 times during the year, right, where families can change, right? So if you started remote, right, we can make an assumption that there will be a time in about October or November where you could switch, right? And you could say that you want your child to come back to school.
Okay, you just answered that one. Somebody just asked that question too.
Oh, good.
I actually have a question.
Yeah, please.
Our son is actually starting freshman year there, and he's really excited about the technology classes. How are you going to work through remote learning, like the core technology classes?
It's a great question. So we've been kicking around a lot of different ideas for that. The good parts about like computer science and digital media is that they do use computers, right, as like not the only form of technology, but a big part of that. So most of them are thinking about ways that they can shift their curriculum around so that they could at least start the school year with the units, right, where that students could complete using just the computer. I know that some schools, and like our physics teacher has like thought about ways that they could put together like legit boxes of materials, right? That we could then have a day, right? We know we're gonna have to have a day at some point before the school year starts where like people can come to school probably outside, but to pick up computers or to pick up hotspots or to pick up materials. They could also pick up like their physics box, right? That might have materials in it that they could at least, they could try to do parts of that from home. Those are still some details that we're trying to figure out, but our CTE teachers and our physics and science teachers, I can tell you, are definitely worried about that, but also, being creative with how they can still teach.
There's another question. Will there be socialization or clubs in person, but there will be methods for that remotely?
Yes, I think that, obviously there's not going to be in-person clubs, but Mr. Roberts and Ashley, they have already been thinking about, and like there are clubs and things that are still meeting now, like remotely. I think, I shared earlier that that's the reason that I got up in the morning to go to school, right? So I know that that's really important to our students. And while it's going to look different, we're still committed to providing those extra activities for students.
I have a question that I just need a little clarification on. I know my camera's off. Wait, hold one sec. Here I am. Hi there. Okay, so the scenario, so I just want to make sure I understand what's going on. So it seems as if the thought about having the choice between hybrid and remote only, that you're sort of moving as a school towards realizing that the hybrid is just not, we're not ready for that. And that it's going to be remote. And then you talked a little bit about, for students who need it, the building will be open. Mm-hmm. Right. And you sort of described they will be probably with their advisory in a room. And I was just curious about how is that different than the blended learning? Is that question clear?
I think that, so one option is kids are completely at home, right? And they're engaging in classes, right? The other option is just what you said. Students would come to school, right? And they will likely be in their advisory, but they will be following their own schedule, right? Which means you might have, let's say, 10 kids, right? From Miss Margarita's advisory class, right? And they come into room 425, right? But then they are following their, a unique schedule, right? First period, 3 of them might be in English class, 2 of them might be in science class, and they would then be engaging with the kids that are at home, right? And their teacher.
I understand. So it sounds like similar to what my daughter would be doing in college, is that she could go to the campus, but she's still taking all of her classes remotely from her dorm. So it's still going to be a remote interaction. I got it. Thank you for the clarification.
I have a question. My son has an IEP, and so he's in classes with 2 teachers so that he can get that extra instruction where he needs it. What's the plan for how to do that virtually, if there is one?
That is a really great question. And so the DOE hasn't really shared much guidance in that area. Our plan right now is to still have those 2 teachers, right? To have the core teacher and the special educator, in the Zoom room, right? During that class. We could see some models where there's parallel teaching that's going on, right? Where if there's 20 kids live, right, that it might be breakout rooms where there's one teacher with 10 and another teacher with 10. I honestly don't think the DOE has they don't have a great answer to that yet, because I think it's really hard, right? That model of ICT is built off of being in a brick and mortar building. And so I think that what we do is what's best for kids. And so I could see a combination of both of those things happening. Yeah.
I have one more. Thank you for that. That was really helpful. The other one is that my son is just he can put the Zoom on and then put it on mute, or put the Zoom on and not engage on the video. He's not really engaging. And is there a way that they'll be somehow incentivized to actually participate? I mean, we have this problem at work too, so.
I'm so glad you asked that question, right? That's the thing that teachers have been starting to talk a lot about. And part of the reason why I felt like I needed to make a decision on this is so that regardless of whether people agree or disagree, right, that we can start planning, right? And so we're working on a contract, right, that would go home to parents and students, but would list out what are the expectations for doing school in a remote version, right? I've seen some really innovative models, even on Zoom calls. Just to be one really simple example, is the idea that maybe every kid gets I don't have one in front of me, but just a small whiteboard, right? Maybe we mail them home, right? But that there's an expectation that the camera's on, right? So that when there's a question or a math problem or whatever, that students could physically write in 1, 2, 3, all hold up their screen, their board, and then a teacher can literally, just like I'm doing now, right? It's hard with 65 people, but if there's 18 to 20, it's actually pretty easy, like to scan quickly and see that students are engaged. And if a student is not able to turn on their camera, right, because maybe they're at the same point helping their little, I can tell you, like my daughter, she's in the other room right now, like we're facing the same situation. I'm sure there's probably going to be a time where she's helping my second grade son with his math. So like, if she's not able to interact, right, that's important for the school to know. And if that's getting in the way too much, right, we need to be able, like, one, we need to know that so that we can like work on a plan, you know, with the family to make it better. But I think, you know, the DOE said there's going to be live classes, right? We know that last spring, students were like logging on to do their schoolwork at, you know, between 9 o'clock at night and 4:30 in the morning. They were texting and emailing their teachers, and then really mad when their teachers weren't texting and emailing back at 3 in the morning. And so we know that we need to correct some of those like behaviors that we just don't think are, you know, positive. We need to get kids back onto some sort of a regular school day and set some higher expectations. We also need to have higher expectations for our teachers, right? About like making engaging lessons, right? If we're just going to lecture to students with some slides, I don't know, that's not exciting, right? That's something that students could get the slides and read beforehand and then have a discussion in class as opposed to like just listening to their teacher read. That was long-winded. I don't know if that helps answer. I hope it does.
It does. It gives me the sense that you guys are thinking of new and creative ways to engage with the students online. So I think that'll be good. And getting back onto a regular schedule will be essential.
Yeah, I think it's going to be helpful for the teachers as well, right? I've talked to many of them about just how it's impacted their own lives, you know, and schedules. Yeah.
Luke, a really big question that's coming up is how are we working to introduce and induct our ninth graders into the community through this capacity?
That's a great question. If I can, again, Margarita, can I tap you? So Margarita has been, you know, she joined us in year 2 of Maker, and she is, you know, one of the leaders of our advisory program, and they've been thinking about that topic, again, kind of nonstop over the last few weeks. Margarita, would you like to take a second and just sort of walk folks through?
Yeah, sure.
What we're thinking? Yeah.
Hi, everyone. So one of the things that the advisory team and leads are thinking about right now is re-engaging the school community when we are back, whenever that is. We're not really sure when that's happening, but we know it's happening. And especially for our incoming freshman students, right? We know that starting a new school is really challenging, especially high school, but to do it virtually is also adding another layer of challenge. So what the advisory leads are planning is a sort of like series of like engaging activities to do within their advisories that will hopefully also blend into their content classes as well. So you'll see that happening, and that will also sort of build our community at the start of the year. So we're working on that, and we're going to be working on that the rest of the month. So stay tuned.
I have a question for Margarita, actually. Our son is coming in ninth grade. What about having like is he going to be able to do like an orientation, like a tour of the school or do something like that? Because we walked by it the other day. He was like, "Where's my school?" I'm like, "Oh, it's over there." He's like, "Where?" He doesn't even know. And is there any kind of orientation or anything you have planned?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually have student influencers working this summer. Cooper and Liam are rising 10th graders. Joe, is that your kiddo? One of your kiddos? Cooper?
Yes, that's my son, Cooper.
Yes. So Cooper has been working with alongside Liam. They are going to be 10th graders, and they've been working with incoming freshmen. So they're being tasked with sort of like onboarding freshmen. It's kind of a big task because the freshman cohort is one of the largest, I think, in all of Maker history. But we are going to have a series over the next couple of weeks of like onboarding incoming freshmen. I've been reaching out to them as well about like doing some kind of like onboarding stuff with understanding what jump rope is, getting their emails sort of in place, and how to log on to their emails. So we're going to do lots of stuff over the next, hopefully before the school year starts. So we'll make sure all of the freshmen have that sort of in place.
I had a question.
Go, Dante.
Dante for president.
So
Right.
you can't really like control the weather. So like there's gonna be some days where the internet may be down or there's gonna be some connectivity error. So I was just wanting to know like how could we create something to like move past that? Like kind of have school going while like there's a storm or something outside.
It's a really good question, Dante. I mean, honestly, like my answer to that is I think it's about communication, right? Like while I was presenting a few minutes ago, like my phone started going crazy because I think Liz, who's my AP, got like kicked off of this call. And she thought for a moment that the whole meeting went dark, right? And like the meeting got disconnected. But like it didn't, which is good, but she like communicated about her absence for like, I don't know, probably like 2 minutes, right? Like while she got kicked, while she was able to get logged back on. So I think that's just about communication, right? If it's happening every day, then we need to like work on getting you a hotspot so there's like a better, that there's a better connection, which we can help with.
I have a question. So I think I saw somebody else mention this in the chat too. So since the school building will be open and basically the students who have to come in can come in, does that mean that all the teachers are going to be in school teaching their remote lessons from the building, or a teacher is going to be home?
So I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Right? Like there's a survey for teachers and I think principals too, actually, right? To like fill out if you're like requesting an accommodation to work from home. Again, I don't actually approve those. I assume at some point, I'm just going to be told which teachers and staff can work from home, which again, then creates problems for like, I have to have enough adults to like, I don't know, be in front of the children that come to school each day. So you can sort of see it's just like another variable that makes it really hard to plan right now.
So the more people who choose remote learning, the easier it is to staff the school because you don't need as many people.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah. And again, like I am going to continue to repeat that, like, at least to start the school year, right? Like I think to like allow us to get remote learning up and going in a better way than we did last year, right? And then hopefully all these indicators completely coming down and we can, return in a safe way.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So if the teachers are filling out a survey saying if they would like to go in or not, and the kids are, well, there's no chance that the teachers one would be done first, because that would definitely impact our decision. I don't know that I would have Griffin go in if the teacher was on a video. It seems like I would just keep him home.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing that answer would definitely have an impact on whether he were to go or not.
I think it's safe to say that with this current model, if he was in his classroom, right, there would be an adult with him in there,
Mm-hmm.
right? But he would be likely in Zooming, right, into another class.
Okay, so
right?
the teacher would be on a Zoom. The teacher would be on video.
Yes, like regardless.
Okay, yeah, I'm not concerned about an adult being in the room, even though I know you guys have to have that. It's more, yeah, it's more about would the teacher be on video?
Yeah.
But chances are they would be.
They will be under this model. again, like it makes it the easier. Like I'm anticipating that the whole thing gets shut down at some point, right? Even if it's for like 48 hours, right? So like we do need to be able to like flip to a remote school overnight.
Yeah.
And schools that aren't planning for this, I don't know how they would actually do that. Like without it being, and with this model, Griffin's schedule would be his schedule, like in terms of which classes he's taking, regardless of whether he's at home, at Maker, on a beach, like wherever he's at, that would stay consistent.
Right. It's just in either scenario, the teacher's on a video.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. That answers a lot. Okay.
Glissette, I think you had a question too. Did you want to ask it?
Yes, hi. My question is, I had a very difficult time this year with the remote because we already know she's lazy as it is, even in school, sorry, but at home was even worse. And so she started falling very, very behind in classes. Now, my concern is, are there going to be like tutors, even if she needs it to catch up with some of the stuff? Because I know she still doesn't understand some of the things that are going on. And how would that work? Would that be remote? Or if she decides to do hybrid, would she get the extra tutoring in class? Sorry if I'm a little off.
You're not off at all.
That's basically my concern when it comes to her.
It's a great question. So I think I'll share two things. One, doing this model, right, allows for students to focus on a lower number of classes at one point, right? In last spring, students were still taking 6 or 7 classes. And under this model, students are going to start with like 3 or 4 classes, right? We know from all the feedback that like it didn't work for kids to try to manage 6, 7, or 8 classes. What students did was they focused on one. They just said, all right, I'm not going to worry about science. I'm just going to do my math now. So I think doing that does two things. One, it keeps the students focused on fewer things. Teachers also have fewer students that are in their classes at one point. So instead of a teacher having to grade and stay in contact with 100 to 120 parents, it's closer to 60 to start with. So I think that there will be opportunities for more contact between teachers and parents to keep you updated. The other thing is that I think that once we get up and going, like within literally like 2 to 4 weeks, like in that first month, and we get a sense of how many students are coming in, I definitely see a model where like if the family is cool with the kid coming in and they need more support, like we can do that, right? Like there'll be an opportunity to create that type of a support for a specific kid. It's a little hard to do that like right now when there's just so many variables in the air. But like, I think that's something that we'd be able to do.
Okay, good. That's good to know. Thanks.
Yep.
I have one more question. So we joined the meeting a little late, maybe like 15, 20 minutes. I don't know if it was discussed. But as far as a vaccine goes, are you going to mandate the vaccine for school if it gets released in time, or are you going to leave it up to the parents, or how's that work?
That's a decision that's above my pay grade, right, to be honest, right? So like some of those decisions will come down. I'm making an assumption like from the city. The things that we've been told, right, are that everyone has to wear the masks, right? There's going to be some sort of like temperature checking at the front of the school. It's a little unclear whether that's me doing that and that's my responsibility, or whether I'm like designating someone to be that person to go downstairs and like be the temperature checker. But I do think that's they've said that that's going to be in place somehow. And that there'll also be, additional masks, if a student or someone shows up and doesn't have one. We've been guaranteed that the order is on the way. It has been for a while.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, I have a question.
Got a question.
Hi, I have a question. One is in regards to like funding. I know that the Trump administration has been saying over and over that if schools do not reopen, they're not going to be funded. If we went with the remote learning, is that going to impact your school funding? That's one. And then my next question is in regards to the resources. I know that for my kids, they got a laptop and an iPad from their school. So would we give those three laptops back to their middle school, or would we give it to UA Maker? Like, how does that work? Do you know?
Yeah, so those are two really good questions. So one thing we've done really well at Maker over the last few years, have to like pat ourselves on the back, is that our numbers continue to increase. Thank you, Margarita. Our numbers continue to increase, which means that our funding continues to increase. So actually, our funding this year is actually better than it was last year. While the news reported mostly cuts to schools, like we're actually hiring more teachers this summer, because we do have our largest incoming freshman class, ever. So when the federal government says that they're going to cut funding, most of our money comes from the state and the local government. It's actually a small percentage that comes from the federal government. So to be honest, like even if we didn't have that money, we would be okay. Might be a little tighter, right? But like we would be okay in that area.
Ms. Jordan has a question.
Yeah.
Ms. Jordan?
Yes, thank you. For seniors, how else can I be engaged with her so she doesn't lose any hope any more than she has already? Seeing that the possibilities of a fear of her not walking down the aisle, which I think we can manage without walking the aisle, but it'll be more that for parents. I'm not on the PTA. Should I be? I mean, should I be, so it can make it a little bit more fun? I don't know, or at least we have a great communication, she and I. However, should I be more engaged? Should I be in the PTA, like I said? I know it's going to be a lot different this year, of course, because we're remote, and she's already decided on remote. So how can we make it more, that is more engaged, so that way, let it go out with a bang, still, like we all know it to be, or how we remember it, at least a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, the first thing is absolutely you should join, our parent association. Those numbers have continued to grow every year, which is great. Evie Raybeck, who's on here, is our PA president. I think secondly, one of the benefits of the pandemic, and I continue to try to like find the silver linings there, was that, almost every kiddo last year earned all of their credits and got all of their regents done, right? Unless you were a freshman, because there's not many. But if you were a sophomore, junior, or senior, I would argue that as long as you passed your classes, those regents exams are done now. So, I think I would flip the script for seniors that might be a little bummed out. Most of them have honestly very little that they still need to do to graduate, right? Like they're within 3 or 4 classes, right, of being done. And a high school diploma during a pandemic or not is still, it's not even a baseline. I mean, it's like below the baseline, right? Like you have to have it to get that college, to get started in that college experience. And that's just like, they're so close, right? And I think that, Ivy does a really great job. I think Ivy's on here. She does a really great job of, leading our college office. And even if college isn't the option that your kiddo wants to take, there are other options, right, for getting into the world of work. And we can help with all those things. So I think there's a way to like engage them in thinking about other things besides like, I'm just staring at a computer screen each day.
Can I just add to that?
On the matter to be more engaged.
Sorry, I didn't hear you there, Indy.
Reach out to Evie is the best for right now, and to go take it.
Yes, we can put her email in the chat as well.
Okay.
reach out to Evie, but also reach out to Ivy, because I'm in charge of all senior activities committee stuff, and to add to Luke's list of things that seniors this year accomplished, they also every single one of them had a meaningful post-secondary plan. And so what I've been telling rising seniors, the junior class from last year, who are nervous about the college and career process, is that as long as they're engaging or parents are engaging with me, the process, there's no issue with the process being online. So I went through the matriculation and application process with the cohort from 2020 this past spring, all online. And I'm prepared to do it that methodically again with the rising seniors throughout the fall and in the spring if needed. That level of support does not change. What I think I need parent support with is making sure that students are opting into whatever space I create for this year. I don't know yet if it's going to look like a classroom or a virtual office or a push into advisory, but it will be there. So just getting your help and support in having your students engage in it.
We have an Ivy and we have an Evie. That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
Well, can I just add that, and this is not just for Kiki, but for everybody, if you are a maker parent, you are automatically a member of the PA. So it's not a thing that you have to join and fill out a form. We don't turn you down. You're already a member. And one thing that to put a silver lining on something, the fact that we had to go remote, Zoom parent association meetings, the Zoom has kind of been a godsend because it's usually really hard to get parents, especially working parents, to show up at the school building at 6 o'clock the first Wednesday of every month. Even though they all want to, they can't all do it. And we've had much greater attendance rates and participation when it was online. And at the moment, it's still approved to be on Zoom. So we will be meeting ourselves and talking to Luke and setting the schedule for this year and putting it out for everybody. But I think traditionally it's been the first Wednesday evening of the month. And all you have to do is come, and you're already, and we're so happy to have you and all of you, you're already members. So.
I did put in the chat, I think folks have my email address, but also our leadership team, which is me and my 2 assistant principals, Chad and Liz. If you email leadership@uamaker.nyc, that goes to all 3 of us. Our meeting is at an hour right now, and I don't want to not answer any questions that are out there. I also want to invite everyone. So I think at this point, we're going to close the meeting, but I have a special invite. If you want to stay on for a little while longer, my team, and I have to give all the credit to the folks that are going to lead this next little session. They've been thinking and making a proposal for what it would look like to open Maker Academy safely. At some point this fall, what would we need to know? What would we need to see in terms of the data and the numbers to open up, bringing people back safely? And they started a proposal for that. But when I started to really look at it, I really saw, I think, what the city should be doing in their plan. And so they, while we have you here, I do want to turn it over to them to be able to, again, we would love for you to stay on. If you can give us 15 or 20 more minutes to hear what their proposal is. And we're getting ready to send that out to the UFT, right, which is the teachers union, to some folks on the city council, and just honestly sharing it more publicly and widely. And so I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Maddie to actually take us through part of that. So this sort of ends the first part of the meeting, and we're going to transition it over to her. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, hello. I'm trying to get this full screen.
Yeah. As you get this full screen, I just want to say hello to, I saw a lot of students I miss and love. Definitely do.
Absolutely.
Happy birthday, Shantae.
Woo.
Shantae? Why'd you have to make a record about me? The ROXXANE? That Shantae?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, miss you, Shantae. I see you too, Alizette. Griffin, I see you all.
All right. So we were hoping to run our ideas and proposals by as many community members as possible. So thank you to those of you who are able to stay and give us some feedback on this. Basically, this proposal came about from a group of staff at Maker who were looking at DOE proposals and thinking, what does safety actually look like? So this is sort of like an alternative approach to school reopenings. Like Luke said, that we're hoping to share more broadly with the city, but was originally started in an effort to find a way to make it safe to open school for our community. And I want to start with this graphic because we've heard a lot during this meeting about remote only, and we think remote only is the safest thing to happen right now. That's where we imagine like right here. And this portion, we don't know how long it would take for remote only to be the option we consider safe and reasonable. But the plan I'm about to share with you sort of takes off from there. So we have a list of prerequisites and then sort of a phasing protocol with checkpoints where we would phase into a full hybrid model. Okay. And just a little context and framework for this plan as well. We know that the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted some racial and economic disparities across the city, the state, the country. And we think that we have to forefront that in our reopening planning and make sure that we're health focused, data driven, and community owned the whole time. So the sort of idea of the phasing, and this is all draft open for feedback, is to start with a phase 0 where we have a pre-opening phase. And this would just be a subset of teachers and staff who come and run 2 mock school days. So sitting in the room the whole day, seeing is it possible to Zoom with a mask on. Just basically like stress testing our assumptions about the plan we have for bringing students into the building before we bring students into the building. After this phase, if we meet all the checkpoints associated with it, we would move on to the pilot phase, where we would bring in 2 small cohorts of 10 students, and they would be coming in on alternate days in the hybrid model. So only 10 students a day into the building to see how do our plans work when there are real live students in our building, and what do we need to adjust before we bring more people in. After we did this and met a set of checkpoints related to this phase, we would go to the 1 grade phase, and we think freshmen would be the first grade we'd want to bring back into the building just because they haven't been in the building yet, they haven't built the community. So we would then try our systems procedures with freshmen and see how that goes. Once we did that phase and met all of the check marks associated with it, we would do full hybrid phase by bringing 1 grade at a week in basically from there. And that is like the big picture overview that this chart is sort of showing. So first we had to meet prerequisites. When we meet them, we move here. When we meet the checkpoints for phase 0, we move here, and so on. And if at any point we fail our checkpoints, we revert to remote only school. I can't see the chat, so I'm gonna quickly pause there.
Okay, I can guide you through some questions from the chat.
There aren't, like, I haven't seen any questions thus far.
Okay.
Sorry, Maddie, that was me saying if you have questions.
Oh.
No problem. So I wanted to quickly just like point to our prerequisites and non-negotiables. That's what comes first before anyone comes into the building. And these are really around sort of like health, safety, wellness priority. So some of them are like PPE is proactively provided, meaning no one is asked to get on a subway before we know they have a mask to wear. We need our ventilation system to be fully operational with new filters that have been shown to filter out COVID particles. And we run this plan by health professionals who say the ventilation system should be operating 24 hours a day to help with the airflow. So we want that to be happening. We want clear and safe protocols in place to react to cases in our community or community spread. And that involves guidance around testing and tracing. An expectation and plan for how to actually do it, to have everyone in the building wearing masks and keeping 6 feet of distance. And as well, we we need an updated discipline policy where the consequences for not following these are not discipline issues. We don't want to contribute to the school to prison pipeline through sort of like trying to enforce safety measures. We want our plans, and here's like a place where our plan is really like presenting an alternative to the DOE. We want our plans to be at least as safe as CDC guidelines for school and the current phased guidance for New York City, so that schools, students, staff, anyone in the building is not the first testing ground for a new policy phase. So for example, the DOE said students will be eating lunch in the room they're sitting in the whole day. We say if indoor dining is postponed in New York City, indoor dining is postponed in our school. Like, we don't want to differ from what CDC or New York City guidance is within the school. We also don't want to disadvantage any families that opt into remote learning, because there's a variety of reasons why that is the best choice for families at this time. So looking towards like this being an equity issue as well. We also want everyone who is supposed to report to the building to have the option, because there's a variety of reasons all people might not want to report to the building or be unable to report to the building. We need community health assessments, not just of Maker, but of New York City, and to be checking those indicators. And we want fair pay for anyone tasked with extra workloads. These things have to happen before we get to phase 0 in our plan. And that's a lot, and a lot of it differs from current DOE guidance. So again, I'll pause to see, as people sort of digest and read, if there's any thoughts, comments, questions, feedback. Okay, I'll also show sort of an example. So we have for each phase sort of the when, who, and what. And I think we can take a look quickly at phase 1 as sort of like a model. So phase 1 is when we have sort of like the test pilot, like the pilot phase, where we have 2 cohorts of 10 students come in, and we see how it goes, like our plans go with students and teachers in the building. After we did this, and we would be monitoring the whole time, making sure all of our prerequisites continue to be met, we would, at the end of that phase, we would have a checkpoint. And so we've made these for all of the phases, but our big buckets of things we would check for are New York City health indicators. So things like the rolling averages of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths continue to decline. There is quick, rapid testing available. There aren't PPE shortages, stuff like that about New York City health. We would check in on Maker health indicators, like, are daily temperature checks occurring? Do we have cleaning materials, PPE? Have there been any cases? Do people scheduled to start the next phase have symptoms? We would also check in about our physical space, like, are people wearing their masks and socially distancing? Are our buildings being cleaned the way that the DOE says they're going to? Is our HVAC running, et cetera? We'd also do a round of community feedback, so doing a lot of surveying of people who are fully remote, how's that going? People who are coming into the building, how's that going? And figuring out what needs to change before we move to the next checkpoint. We also have ideas and checkpoints around curriculum, so thinking about the learning experience, and the schedule. So what do we maybe need to modify about the schedule? Once we checked all these boxes, then we would move on to the next phase and bring more people into the building. So I don't think that it makes sense to go through all of the phases and checkpoints, but just as like a general sort of plan and stance towards reopening, we're definitely interested in getting feedback and planning to email this out for families to look at more in detail to provide more feedback.
I have a question, sorry. First, again, I have to say that I'm a freshman parent, and I have twins coming into your school, and I'm really impressed with how well the school on a whole has kept everyone in communication, and I really and truly appreciate it a lot, sincerely. Second, I guess for me, what I'm trying to understand is, I know that you have the phases, but how would you, and I know you said you have the check boxes, but how are you determine if you fail? Meaning, like, if you did the phase 0 with the teachers, are you looking at maybe teachers' reaction in regards to, say, they wear the mask and after a while they pull the mask down, you know, they get distracted? Like, what exactly is it that you're looking for to say, to see if this is going to work well with the students? And I guess the phase one will be when the 10 cohorts come in, like, what are you looking for in regards to, like, just comfortability, I guess, for the students and how they interact for the day? Like, that's something that I just would like to understand better.
Yeah, it's definitely still a work in progress.
Okay.
However, I can definitely say for phase 0, we're going to have like one of the checkpoints in physical space. So one person will be assigned to each of the rooms where there's a test, and they need to note 0 mask and distancing violations during the teacher trials, because if teachers aren't able to do it, then we're not ready to bring students in.
Gotcha.
And we have developed some surveys. I mean, these are still in draft form, but basically we would survey how are families feeling. And then, like, there's also, if we look at like the student survey, this is a student survey, student facing survey that maybe or may not load. Yes. And so we would survey every student who is spending time in the building about how well informed they feel. Right. If there's enough access to PPE, how often do you see people without their mask properly worn?
Right. Okay.
How often do you see people coming within 6 feet? And I mean, we would be looking for like really high level responses to this to check if we're doing it well.
Right. And so, and also I know you mentioned something about like riding the trains. So is that something that also you will have in as part of your, I guess, what you will look at also for a checkpoint? Because I think, to me, like, my biggest challenge is the train, right? We take the A or the C line, and I just personally don't think that that's the safest thing for me. Like, you know, get into taking an Uber to the school, yes, you know, but to say, like, to put children and adults on the train, I just know just on a regular day, people act silly over the most stupidest thing. You know, you bump into them and they want to make a scene. Worse yet, someone, you know, gets on a train without a mask. So, you know, the safety of the children. And I think when I research and I look at everything that's happening in regards to, you know, looking at the DOE and everyone's thought process, I don't really think people are thinking it through like how you all are. And I'm really, really impressed for real, that they're not really thinking of the person, you know, and that personal reaction and what you're going to encounter as you travel or commute to school, you know, and just also my personal feeling too is I don't think it's fair to put so much pressure on a teacher. So I agree with the additional funding for the teachers, because as it is, sometimes some students can be difficult. And if you have a teacher who's saying to a student, you have to wear your mask, and if the student decides to be, you know, difficult, then that puts the teacher in an uncomfortable spot, you know. So I also appreciate the fact that you talked about that portion with the no prison pipeline, because we know for a fact that is usually what will happen, right? Mm-hmm. They will indeed use this as an opportunity to suspend students, you know, to expel them, and unfortunately, it's our Black and brown kids that suffer. So thank you very much, for real. Thank you. And I will read it, and if I have any inputs, I will definitely add. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we are around the question you were raising about the commute. I mean, we can't control the commute, and to be like completely transparent, I'm scared. Like, I'm really scared to get on a subway. Some indicators we're looking for in this phase plan is all students are wearing masks on the subway. That would be through survey results and also through how they're showing up at school, which isn't a perfect correlate, but like it indicates something if they're not showing up with a mask, whether they wore it on the subway. And then the other thing that we have included as sort of a checkpoint is around the reporting and like teacher observation and reporting as well about how crowded trains are during our commute. Around our schedule checkpoints, we have the schedule start and stop times allow for a safe, uncrowded commute. So this checkpoint is asking for flexibility in changing start and stop times if we need to based on crowded commutes. And I'll just say it again, like, this is an alternative to the DOE plan. It's what we're sort of like trying to push out as an option, a safe option instead, or as like an add-on. Okay.
All right. So still we have like 39 people on, including the teachers. I'm hoping we have informed you thoroughly. The moral of this meeting is that, there's too many safety precautions that are not being taken. Um, and it's too little information that's being given to us. So you are risking safety, and it's an equity issue as well. So our staff has definitely got to have all that in mind. They're using this to brew it up, definitely to inform you. And I hope everyone appreciates the transparency, because this is information that other schools and other entities are not giving out. But the transparency is to keep us safe, and that's why we're doing it. So I want to give our staff a round of applause for sure. And we definitely want to take any more questions. Make sure you fill out the survey as well. Now that you have this information, please fill out the survey. I see there's some new messages.
Mr. Roberts, if I can add into, I would just say, like, helpful to do both surveys, right? There's the original survey about the remote versus the hybrid in person, but then also if you would like to sign on to what you've just seen right here, I know that the link has gone in a few times here, to sign on to something that we're going to push out in the next 24 hours to, other schools and to the unions, to the city.
That's right.
Again, I just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight and being a part of this. Please reach out at any point, specifically if you have questions that are unique to your family situation that you'd like to talk through with us. We're working a lot these days, so you won't bother us. We want to hear from you. We want to help you, really understand everything that's going on and continue to make, the right decisions for you and your family. So thank you, everyone. And at this point, I think we'll sign off. Okay. Thank you.